Are we ready to get started?
I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Then welcome everyone. This is Gus Murby, the Chair of the Board of Selectmen, welcoming everyone and opening the April 21st Medfield Board of Selectmen's meeting. A few points first. This meeting is being recorded pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Medfield Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so by following the instructions on the agenda and meeting notice that was posted on the town's website. And just as a ground rule here, because I tended to forget it a few times in our last meeting, remote participation rules apply, so roll call votes will be required for each action we take. Let's hope I remember that as we go through. As we normally do at the start of each of our meetings, we'd like to just take a minute of appreciation for our service members serving our country across the globe, and especially in this particular time for our first responders, Board of Health, and other workers who are still doing their jobs to keep our society running, even in the face of the coronavirus threat. Thank you. Okay, Christine, I think I can, if I'm just going down the list, that's great. Do you have anything in particular? I don't think we have any appointments.
No appointments. The first thing we were going to talk about, why don't we do the Hinckley Allen letter first, since we have Georgia here, and then we can move on to the election.
Okay. So we have a request to authorize Town Administrator Christine Trewiler to sign the engagement letter with Hinckley Allen, which involves us switching our bond counsel from our current counsel to Hinckley Allen as our new bond counsel, and particularly in light of the fact that we're probably embarking on a couple of years where our bond activity is going to be fairly high. Christine or Georgia, either one of you have comments?
Sure. I'll give you a little bit of background. As always, my main goal is to save money for the town. And when we spoke with Jay from Hinckley Allen, it became very clear to Christine and I that we would be able to save a few dollars, especially with the upcoming or possible upcoming sizable bond issue. Back in February, Christine and I, which seems neons ago, met with Jay Gonzalez from Hinckley Allen, which is a bond counsel firm. Jay used to work for Palmer and Dodge, which is now Loch Lord, who is the bond counsel that we currently contract with. Our initial meeting with Jay proved to us that we will get a very high level of attention from himself, and services will be very consistent. We believe that Hinckley Allen will be a great asset to our team. Just to give you an example, I don't know whether or not you've read the memo that I gave to Christine earlier this morning. To give you an example, an $80 million bond issue, again, thinking hypothetically for a future school bond issue, an $80 million school bond issue would cost us approximately $83,000 in bond counseling expenses with Loch Lord. Again, this is an estimate. Jay has given us an engagement letter, somewhat, which is similar to a contract, and they are going to cap all of their bond counsel fees at $60,000 for that bond issue. Again, keep in mind that right now we're not sure how we're going to finance the school project, whether we will do one bond issue or whether we will do multiple bond issues. But they have made a commitment to the town of Medfield to cap the bond counsel services at $60,000. That's a $23,000 savings right there. It could possibly be less than that, depending on the financing techniques that we're going to use, which right now we're not sure of. So with that in mind, I am asking that you consider engaging the services of Hinckley Allen to replace Loch Lord. Our financial advisor will still remain with Hilltop Securities. I've been treasurer collector for 20 years. We've used Hilltop Securities for the last 20 years. And this pretty much fell on Christine's lap and my lap. We never realized that we had a choice as to who we could choose as bond counsel. When we met Jay, we felt very comfortable. And what I should add is that his number will be on speed dial, because we will never get charged for any of the questions that we want answered. And I think we're going to have a very positive and successful relationship with the company and with Jay.
Georgia, on one point, partly for our benefit, but also maybe for the benefit of anybody out in the public that's listening. So we have a bond counsel here that we're looking at signing a contract for. They are distinct from our financial advisors, who I think are distinct from our accountants as well. Could you just differentiate the role that the financial advisor to the town plays versus the bond counsel?
Sure. Bond counsel reviews all the documents that the financial advisor will prepare during a bond issue. And it has nothing to do with town council. That's totally different. And then as far as your auditors, that's a totally different party as well. But your bond counsel will review all of the notes and all of the legal letters that are prepared during the course of a borrowing.
So in the context of a bond issue, the financial advisors would probably give us advice on the best way to configure the bonds, where the bond counsel would be the one making sure that the documents that we issue in support of the bonds is legally sufficient.
And they do advise as well. I'm sure. I think we're going to get a little bit more than we're bargaining for with Jay. Jay has a little bit of background. I'll definitely, I know you've read it. Jay did work for Palmer and Dodge, which is now Loch Lord. Additionally, he did work in state government as Secretary of Administration and Finance under Governor Patrick. So he has that municipal experience that I do believe is going to be an asset to the town and to myself and to Christine.
How else do our financial advisors advise us beyond bonds? What else do the financial advisors do?
Our financial advisors advise us as regards to what we need to do to keep a healthy bond rating. And right now, within the next couple of months, there are going to be phone calls that are going to be made to municipalities in the state of Massachusetts by Moody's and by Standard & Poor's. There are going to be guidelines that are coming out, COVID guidelines, that are going to change the way municipalities are being rated due to the unprecedented times that we're living in. Unfortunately, we are looking at being downgraded, but at the same time, our financial advisor is always there, to guide us, to increase our reserves.
Okay, thank you, thanks. Mike, Pete, any questions or comments?
I think this is a good idea. Oh, go ahead, Pete.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think this is a good idea. I think having counsel that we've picked ourselves and that will give us advice that may not be in the best interest of our financial advisor or in the best interest of whomever is kind of structuring the bond, particularly on what's legally permissible and not permissible, what could be done, and how we might want to structure some offerings. And obviously, the financial advisor and the people who are going to underwrite the bonds are going to have their own view of how that should be structured. And, sometimes you get the, well, you can't do it that way kind of approach. And it's if the lawyers are kind of, obviously the lawyers are our lawyers, but they represent a lot of people in the bond market and we're a very small player. And so you can't do it that way. Maybe it's not legal, or maybe we just rather not do it that way, even though there might be something that's more advantageous for the town. So I see this as getting someone who's going to be a little bit more independent, who understands what the laws are. Obviously I think there's going to be changes in the market over the next few months. There's been a lot of changes already in the debt markets and more to come. So, I think this is a good move, and I think having someone with government experience, but also someone who is hungry to do a good job, and doesn't see this as just sort of a client that they have forever, without kind of question, would be an advantage too.
And we also will have the flexibility of being able to pick up the phone and talk to him. Whereas now with our current bond counsel, I always have to have our financial advisor be the intercept of the phone call. So Jay is very willing, to get down and to work. And all it takes is a vote from the selectmen, and all of our files will be transferred from Loch Lord to Hinckley Allen. And it'll be business as usual.
I'd just like to echo what Georgia said, that when we met with them, it felt like they would actually be working for us and on our side, and helping us to achieve our goals as from the town.
Pete? Yeah.
So I agree that I think this is a great idea to do this. First of all, we're saving money, so thank you for arranging for that, Georgia. Also, I mean, Chris and I met him back when he was Secretary of Administration and Finance. He ran a meeting about the Medfield State Hospital that there are probably 15 to 20 people in the room. It was all DCAM people, and it was the first time that we'd met with administration and finance. And he's clearly is a very bright gentleman. I came away from that meeting having a lot of confidence in his ability. And so I think that, and seeing the services that you're going to get, I didn't know that you couldn't call your prior bond counsel. I think that just being able to do that is going to be huge for you. So I think this is an excellent move.
Thanks. I think the specific thing we're being asked to do tonight is to authorize Christine to sign the acceptance of the engagement letter that Jay provided to us. Mark, I understand that you reviewed that letter from your standpoint, from a legal standpoint. There's no issues. Is that correct?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
It's a fairly typical attorney's engagement letter, and it's fairly straightforward as far as my reading of it. I know Gus raised some questions about some particular language, and as I indicated through Christine, if you have any issues with particular language, I would suggest you go back and ask them to revise it.
Which we did.
Okay.
Did anybody have any issues with the second iteration? I didn't have time to really review that, compare it to the first one that came today.
No, the major change was I had sent you an email where he had committed to capping the fees on the project, but that was not included in the letter of engagement. So we did have to change
okay.
that.
Mhm, mhm.
Yep, good.
Yeah, and the issues that I had were all, as long as Mark was, I would agree with Mark that in a circumstance like a lot of our normal contracting process seems to be to not accept the proposed contract from a subcontractor that we're dealing with, but to substitute our standard town form contract instead. In a case of a situation like this, I would agree with Mark that for a professional service of this nature, it's not a problem to accept the engagement letter that's submitted, as long as the terms of the engagement letter all seem fine. And I think Mark reinforced the notion there were no major problems there. Then I think we're good to go. But that was it.
It's not unusual for us to contract with attorneys on the basis of engagement letters.
Right.
We've done it many times.
Yep. Okay. So if there's no,
I would move then to contract with Hinckley Allen for the bond counsel services for the town.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Marcucci,
Yes.
Mr. Murby,
yes.
Peterson, yes.
You're supposed to say I, Pete. We've always said I, and you always say yes. We switched it up on you.
No, I like to say yes better than I. So you're going to have trouble converting me.
Because you're so modest, Pete.
When you're aboard of scalawags, I just seems like the better word.
Aye. Me, Arties.
Okay, what do you want to do next, Christine?
I actually want to say just another
Sure.
another point. I want to thank you. Last week I did approach you with changing the due date of the real estate tax bills. I know we had a long discussion, and I did mention that I felt comfortable with the June 1st extension, only because we had somewhat of a satisfaction that the banks, the escrow companies would be paying municipalities despite of the June 1st deadline on May 1st. I just want to let you know that my treasurer collector's mailbox today was bombarded. It has come to our attention as treasurer collectors that the banks will not be paying on a May 1st due date if the selectmen chose to move the date on June 1st. I want you to know that we had our deposits in last Thursday.
Wow.
This all changed very early Friday morning. There were only a very few handful municipalities that got their funds last Thursday from all three major tax providers in the state of, in the country, in the United States. So we were very fortunate to be one of the few that got those funds. Many other municipalities right now, for the majority, have extended the deadline to June 1st, and they will not be seeing that money until probably May 28th or 29th, which will cause a significant headache regarding cash flow. So I want to thank you for that. And I'll let you get to the rest of your meeting.
Speaking as a first-term selectman, there have been several specific incidents over the 3 years that I've looked at, decisions we've made that I think have proven to be good, far better than we could have foreseen at the time we made them. And I've concluded that as good as it is to be smart in making decisions, a lot of times it works out just to be lucky in making the right call at the right time.
I think we were lucky. And again, I had contacted them prior. So I think Medfield was on the top of their list. And then I think when they started seeing how everybody was changing it, I think they said, you know what, a month, let these funds stay with us for a month before we give them out to the municipalities. But I am a very happy tax collector and treasurer as of this afternoon.
Glad to hear it, Georgia.
All right. Thank you.
That's great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Georgia.
Bye.
Take
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
So the only other formal item I had tonight was to talk about the town election on the 4th. The town clerk brought to my attention today that some towns are changing the hours of the polls. And while he's not recommending that to you, he wanted to make sure that the Board of Selectmen are aware that you have the authority to change the hours. Currently, we're open 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So on the 4th, you can change that if you would like. We are encouraging absentee ballots. We have, as of this morning, we had over 110, I believe, that had gone out, which is a decent amount considering last year at the town election, we only had 420 voters. So we're getting there with our absentee ballots. We'll continue to push the ballots out there. But it's up to you whether or not you want to change the actual physical location of the poll hours.
And Pete and Mike, because my head's the one that's on the chopping block at this particular election, I recuse myself from this conversation.
I think that
So what's the mechanism for notifying the voters of that? I would think that's critical.
According to the Secretary of State's office, it's a social media campaign, email to notify the change in hours.
I think our election day hours are actually longer than most other towns. Don't think most other towns start?
They are. Most towns start at 7 and go 7 to 8. We go 6 to 8. We have no issue with continuing the hours. We are going to have limited staff available that day. There will be social distancing in place. We do expect it to take a little bit longer than normal, but it's up to you whether or not you want to continue that.
I would be inclined to not disrupt the usual patterns, just because people might count on them.
I would agree.
I know it results in an extra hour or two for the poll workers to work, but I think that probably makes more sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with Pete. I think the extra hour here makes even more sense if we're trying to space things out and keep people apart than condensing it. I think if you condense the hours, I assume that's what you're talking about, Christine. You're not talking about making it 3 a.m. to midnight.
No. Some towns they have reduced it to only a 4-hour window,
Mhm.
which I think again, defeats what we're trying to do with social distancing
Mhm.
and voting. But the town clerk wanted to make sure when you start to read other articles about other towns doing it, that you had the opportunity as well.
I appreciate being told I have the opportunity, and I hope it's going to be a very boring 14 hours for the people who have to sit there and administer it, and hopefully everybody will vote by absentee and it won't be an issue. But I think the longer the hours, the easier it'll
I
be for everybody to get used to the new system. I don't think there's going to be long lines at all. I don't think people are going to be rushing out to vote if they haven't requested an absentee ballot, but I would keep the hours the same.
Perfect. And we did find out, we have approval today that if the weather is nice, we can move the election outside into the parking lot.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, so we will be doing that depending on the weather, and we're working out exactly the logistics of parking and everything, but we'll take care of that.
Great.
You could actually do drive-through voting, Chris.
So actually that question came up and you are not allowed, because that was my recommendation.
Too good an idea.
I know. So apparently I was not the first to think of it, because they had already had their answer prepared. So, okay, I will let the town clerk know we will continue with the 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Great.
The only other item I had was just to let you know that the Board of Health has issued a recommendation today for facial coverings. They actually voted last Thursday and they issued the memo today, and they're recommending that all essential businesses have their employees wearing masks. They're also recommending anyone over the age of 2 also have masks. And when I say masks, I mean facial coverings. They can be scarves, cloth coverings. I believe I have a model demonstrating right there.
I just to reinforce the recommend. First off, I think I haven't been out a whole lot over the last several days, but the businesses that I visited for the most part all are fully masked up. I noticed I was at Brothers today, and I noticed they actually have signs in front of their 2 doors asking people to put masks on before they enter the store. So that's good to see. Just basically, I would ask people to go and support this. Our Board of Health has done a tremendous job of exercising judgment, trying to keep. I compare how actually our entire state has dealt with this compared with some of the controversy that I'm reading about across the country. And I think our state, certainly our own town and our Board of Health, our first responders have approached this with a degree of measured thoughtfulness that I think has helped us kind of navigate our way through this in an effective way. And I would just ask everyone that gets that word to support it. We're getting advice from the people in our town who we're relying on for their best medical advice. Listen to them.
Thank you. That's all I had for formal agenda items this evening.
I have one just editorial comment about, I spend some time periodically on our various Facebook groups. And one thing that was sobering to me yesterday was a discussion came up around various people and how you file for unemployment. And somehow or another, I guess in my head, I had kind of assumed that Medfield was, in a sense, going to be largely immune from just the financial hardships. And it just worked out because of the messages that I read yesterday that the financial hardships are hitting more broadly than I somehow or another thought. So as we go through things, I appreciated what Georgia had to say because I think what we were trying to do is figure out how to navigate a way that allows the town to continue to function financially and get the things done that the town needs to do without putting undue burdens on people. But I think speaking for myself, in the last couple of days, I've seen some messages that have caused me to kind of get a little more sober about that this is hitting home with people in very meaningful financial ways. And whatever we can all do to make that as little pain as possible, we need to continue to do that.
very concerned too about the infrastructure of our systems, basically. I mean, the store next to Deb's office is vacant now. Capsule is gone. The one next to Capsule, Matt Treese has put things outside and is selling from a stand that's in front of his front door now. I mean, this is clearly it's a really severe economic impact on the stores and the restaurants. There was a fellow on 60 Minutes who was trying to feed the world. I don't remember exactly what his name is, but he's feeding millions now through his, he's a restaurateur who's basically turned all of his restaurants into preparing meals for needy people. And his point was that you have to keep the infrastructure there, or else when we get on the far side of the recession, it'll be too hard to build it back up. And so I think it's important that we do what we can to try to keep the infrastructure.
So I didn't have anything else, Christine.
Okay.
Mike, Pete, anything else to?
I know we just met last Thursday, so.
Nothing for me.
Right. So we set I was going to say we set a new indoor record, but technically I guess we're not all in the Chenery room. So getting a meeting done in under a half an hour doesn't quite constitute an indoor record, but at least it's an unofficial record for the shortest Board of Selectmen's meeting that I've seen, unless Bill, John, or who else was on there that you mentioned?
I have Bill, John, Jess Riley, Leo Brem, and Roberta Lynch.
So if any of you would like to push us over the half-hour mark with any comments, we can do that. Otherwise, I think we're going to close. Hearing no comments, we have a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
I second.
Mr. Marcucci.
Leo apparently needed an alibi till like 8:30 tonight. So aye.
Mr. Murby.
Aye.
Peterson, yes. Thanks, guys. See ya.
All right.
All right. Have a good week, everyone.